Hi, and welcome to the fourth of my Zone Wars tactics videos. Today, it's the Nova Cult. More than any other gang in Zone Wars, members of the Nova Cult need to work together. There are some fantastic synergies that you can pull off, where one character's abilities will hugely augment those of another, often allowing you to take control of a game in the first few rounds. The flip side of that is that if you don't use your abilities collectively, thinking of your models as individuals rather than a team, then the Nova Cult can be vulnerable. That makes team selection all the more important and fun. And at the end of the video, I shall give you a few builds that I've tried out that seem to work pretty well. I shall also give you a little advice on how to counter the Nova Cult if you come across them in the zone. Plutonia, with his unmistakable boot-on-rock stance of authority, is a good all-rounder who can use his puppeteer ability to take control of enemy models. This typifies the cult's playstyle, which favours subterfuge and range manipulation over direct close-quarters conflict. Early game, puppeteer can be used to move models drastically out of position. Even better, if you manage to inflict a few wounds with a murderous attack on one of the hapless victim's allies, this can spook an opponent and put them on the back foot right from the start. Generally speaking, you'll want to keep Plutonia away from the fighting. This might change a little depending on which random mutation you draw for him, but so many psionic abilities require line of sight that he'll usually work best as a tented general, surveying the battlefield from a hilltop in the distance. Scion is for me key to the way that the Nova Cult want to play. All of the factions need a steady supply of endpoints to pull off their tricks, but that's doubly true for the cult. Thanks to Scion and his psionic boost ability, they're all set. When this mutation triggers, the character can move medium. The controlling player then gains 3 mutation points. Bada bing, bada boom. Best of all, it costs no endpoints to activate. So guaranteed round 1 you can shuffle Scion a little way up the board and add 3 MPs to your stash. In essence then, he's a living battery who ensures that your other characters have always got gas in the tank. Scion's single other notable feature is his survival. 6 is the best in the game, putting even Danko in a little bit of shade. This guy really knows the zone. In a fight though, Scion is pretty useless. I tend to use him to scavenge for loot on my side of the table, making as much use of cover as possible. If he gets taken out mid-game, it's not the end of the world, as by then you've usually got some MPs to spare and your other characters are probably chipping in. Psycho is the best fighter in the faction, able to mix it up both at range or in melee, thanks to both solid attributes and some good starting gear. He's not tough though, so I'd still avoid sending him too far forward on his own. Any of the big fellas from the GenLab tribe will probably outclass him, unless he draws an aggressive second mutation like Electric or Beastmaster. Psycho's core mutation, Clairvoyance, can work really well in rounds 1 or 2, perhaps fueled by Scion's psionic boost. Remember that synergy I mentioned at the start. When Clairvoyance activates, the model moves medium, then draws a number of artifact cards equal to the MP spent. The controlling player then looks at these and places them on the battlefield under the tokens however they like. How good is that? There are no guarantees, but you can make it far more likely that your gang will pick up something cool while your opponent's models are left fishing around for scraps. You may only use Clairvoyance once all game, but even so, it's clear how much of an impact it can have. After that, Psycho can grab the juiciest loot, then conduct a fighting withdrawal with the job done. Where Psycho is a potential sniper, Tula is a dedicated one. A scrap rifle and 5 range really lean into this, but it's her mutation that really seals the deal. Magnetism is a reflex ability that lets Tula reduce the damage she suffers from a ranged weapon attack. So give her a nice perch from which she can survey the battlefield, and she can dig in like an Alabama tick. A steady supply of shots can be another great way to provide mutation points for the faction, and this can be really important as Tula's teammates may not be dishing out a lot of damage but using other more subtle manipulative abilities. Synergy, baby. The final model in the faction, Maxim, has a really enjoyable mutation that I've seen used in some surprising ways. Parasite allows him to move medium and then use an action mutation or module of any model within long range, friend or foe. I've seen Maxim use the self-destruct module to detonate in the middle of a game. It created complete chaos. I've also seen him use frog legs to suddenly bound across the battlefield, which was quite hilarious. Stats-wise, Maxim has excellent survival and is a good all-rounder. There's no doubt, though, it's his unpredictability that makes him so much fun to play. Depending on which second mutation he gets, he can become even more chaotic. Imagine him setting fire to his enemies with pyrokinesis, or flinging them around the battlefield with telekinesis. Potentially, Maxim has access to every mutation and every module on the game board. That is wild, and I love it. One build I've seen employed to great effect, against me I should say, is Scion, Plutonia and Psycho. Scion provided the mutant points, allowing Psycho to scan the battlefield with his clairvoyance and place the loot accordingly. Plutonia employed Puppeteer to run interference, constantly scattering the enemy and having them fight amongst themselves. This build of the Nova Cult inflicted virtually no direct damage on my gang, but they completed several objectives and escaped the board with some fantastic loot. They won the game. If you want to play a more aggressive style, then consider Psycho, Tula and Maxim. It can surprise an opponent when a cult gang starts to dish out some damage. I'd certainly advise you to stick to ranged attacks, which you can unleash from the get-go. Maxim can move forward, of course. He's such a wild card that you never quite know what opportunities for chaos will present themselves. If you come up against the Nova Cult, then a good tactic can be to try and stay out of sight as you move up the board. A lot of their abilities have really good range, but often need line of sight for them to activate. You will need to move up the board though. If you allow the Nova Cult to dictate the flow of the game, then you'll lose control of it. They'll be moving their models around whilst shoving yours out of position, placing artifacts in ways that help them. You've got to get forward and get in their faces. My final piece of advice is to kill Scion as quickly as you can. If you can rob the faction of its supply of mutation points, then life becomes a lot harder for these psionic renegades. I hope you've enjoyed the video. If so, please consider hitting the like or subscribe button. I hope to see you again soon, and until then, keep rolling.